conversation. Hope you guys can hear me. Let me check this out right quick. I'm doing this live stream simply because I'm tired of the arguments and the claims that, Caribbean blacks or Jamaican blacks or, were somehow helped, or when a lot of these laws were passed, like the Civil Rights Movement or the 14th Amendment movement were passed, that it was somehow black people or FBAs had Caribbean blacks in mind when they were helping to pass a lot of these laws or these rules that are on the books. And when you go into these spaces, these FBA spaces, you hear these lies. And the thing is, if we sit back and we don't address it or counteract it, the lies are going to stick as the truth. You know what I'm saying? See, I wish we could just ignore it, but we can't, right? Let me say this too. Let me say this right here. Let me say this too. Let me say this right here. Let me say this too. I forgot what I was going to say. Black Americans, like, y'all gotta be honest with yourselves and just admit that you was never really about unifying or uniting with Caribbean blacks. So you was never really for hey, what's going on? So for you guys coming into the channel, respect my channel, respect me, respect how I want to run the platform, contribute. What's going on, brother? Contribute to the show, to speak on the topic. If you speak about any other topic, I'm gonna either block you or I'm just gonna cut off the chat and put it to subscriber chat. But anyway, not playing the game right now. We talking about something different. Just read the title. All right. Have some YouTube etiquette. What's going on? So the reason why I'm having this conversation is not to go against Black Americans and not to be divisive, but it's really to challenge a lot of the lies being had and to correct some of these lies, right? And I just wish that Black Americans would just come out and say that you're not in agreement with, thank you, brother. Shout out to that there is a title. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to ignore people who's distracted in the chat because this is clearly a title. I'm looking at it. Right. I would just wish that Black Americans would just say you never liked Caribbean blacks and you never really accepted us into your culture. Because the argument or the rift between FBA or Black Americans and Caribbean blacks, it's not new. I heard these back and forths growing up, being born in the 90s, growing up in the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s and the 2010s. So I remember these arguments going on between Black Americans and Caribbean blacks. Black Americans would tease Black Jamaicans would tell us that we were not black, and we need to speak proper English. They would call us coconut music, banana boat music. I have never heard a white European refer to reggae music as coconut music or banana boat music. I never heard Europeans do it. But I've heard Black Americans say the most racist things towards, or prejudicial, divisive things towards Caribbean blacks, right? I remember where Black Americans would tell Jamaicans to go back to their country, because what would happen is a Jamaican would come to the country and he'll get himself 2 or 3 jobs. He'll take advantage of the opportunities that were there. So a lot of Black Americans would hit on Jamaicans and say, I need to go back to your country because you're taking all of the jobs. That's what it was, right? So Black Americans never really fucked with Caribbean immigrants like that. See what I'm saying? They never really rock with us like that. They may have rocked with us even with Marcus Garvey, right? They didn't really like Marcus Garvey. Because of Marcus Garvey, he was a conservative capitalist. And a lot of the Black Americans at that time, they were either socialists or communists. Like W.E. Du Bois, he was a communist. He joined the Communist Party. A lot of the civil rights movement, a lot of the Black Panthers, a lot of them, they were Marxists or socialists, right? Marcus Garvey was a straight up conservative capitalist. Go look him up, right? Now, in particular today, I'm going into the 14th Amendment because on Twitter, you go into those little spaces, those little spaces on Twitter. Not like on Twitter, they have a space where you can go into a group chat, a group talk. When I was going in there, Tommy Sotomayor, a YouTuber by the name of Tommy Sotomayor was in there, right? And one of the FBAs was like, well, the 14th Amendment helped Caribbean Blacks and African Blacks, or tethers as they're calling us now. First they called us exotic Black, or we're not really black. And the reason why they say we're not really black is because, according to them, Caribbean Blacks, or Jamaican Blacks in particular, they didn't go through the same slavery struggle that Black Americans went through, which is a lie. Jamaicans had to fight 2 colonial masters, first the Spaniards and then the Brits, to finally gain their independence in, I believe, in 1960 something, 1964, 65. Haitians, they had to fight their oppressor. Most of the Caribbean islands, they had to fight 300 years plus of either the French, the Dutch, the Brits. So it's Black people in the Caribbean islands fighting various colonial masters. But according to Black Americans, Caribbean Blacks were not black because we didn't go through the same struggle. And I noticed with Black culture in general, whether it be Black American or the diaspora, it's like you're not part of the group if you're not going through the struggle, which I think is a Marxist, communist type of thing, right? Because with communism, with communist or socialism, what it is the people at the bottom revolting or rebelling of the people at the top. The thing is, if Black people are at the top now, right? If Black folks is at the top of the food chain, who's going to rebel against Black folks? See what I'm saying? It can no longer preach that victimhood shit, right? But we're going to go into the 14th Amendment because Black Americans in that space that I was talking about earlier on Twitter, or X, whichever you want to call it, they're making the claim that because of the 14th Amendment, that it helped a lot of Caribbean Blacks, or Caribbean Blacks was included with that 14th Amendment. And the argument is no, it's not, right? That 14th Amendment was meant for Black Americans who were formerly enslaved. To help those Black Americans who were formerly enslaved naturalized, and then help the Black Americans who were born there slave become citizens. That's what that 14th Amendment was for. It wasn't directly for Caribbean Blacks. It was mainly for Black Americans, right? For Blacks, or because a lot of people don't know, the Irish was enslaved for 1,000 years, right? The difference between Blacks and the Irish is that Blacks, they were stripped. They went to what you call antebellum slavery. And what happened was that Blacks, they were used as breeding. You bred them as slaves. And their religion was taken from them. Their culture was taken from them. Their religion was taken from them. That's the difference between the Irish being enslaved and the Black Americans being enslaved. But pretty much every group at one point in time was being enslaved by another group, or sometimes the group within their own. because a lot of blacks don't want to recognize that a lot of the Africans in Africa, they fought and had wars, and they were savage and brutal against each other too, right? The reason why black folks don't want to admit that is because they want to pose that, this white man, he's the wicked one, and black folks were just this perpetual victim, and we're also innocent, which is farthest from the truth, right? Because you had the Moorish empires that were enslaving and fighting each other, and also enslaving Europeans. But specifically, we're talking mainly about the Black American space, right? And then even with that, you had Native American tribes that were fighting amongst each other, right? That Thanksgiving thing where you see those Native Americans in that Thanksgiving thing, in that Thanksgiving picture with the pilgrims and the natives, those Native Americans in there, they turned on other Native Americans, not speaking in code, of a certain hue and color for the European pilgrims that came here. And then the European pilgrims turned on, it's a big story. You got to go look it up, right? But we're going to break down the 14th Amendment. This video is not going to be too long today because I just want to break down something, right? So let's go into it. We're going to break down the Dred Scott case. We're going to break down Roe versus Wade. We're going to go into the Republican Party and the Democratic Party a little bit, because all of this world history, American history, it ties. Everything is together. The dots are connected. So you got to do the research and put the pieces together objectively, right? My thing is you got to break it down objectively, because objectively is what you see right in front of your face, not what your opinions are or your feelings are. What do you see in your face? Right? That's what it means to be objective. You address that first. Then you can come with something of your own personal opinion, right? So the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, Civil Rights of 1868, passed by Congress June 13, 1866, and ratified July 9, 1868. The 14th Amendment extended liberties and the rights granted by the Bill of Rights to formerly enslaved people. Following the Civil War, so who was the formerly enslaved people? Black Americans. Following the Civil War, Congress submitted to the states and 3 amendments as part of its Reconstruction program to guarantee equal civil and legal rights to black citizens. This is by the Republican Party, by the way, right? A major provision of the 14th Amendment was to grant citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, thereby granting citizenship to formerly enslaved people. So like I said, the citizens born was those that came from antebellum slavery that were being bred as slaves. The ones who were being naturalized were the ones that were being brought over here to the Americas as slaves, right? Another equally important provision was a statement that nor shall any state, and I quote, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction, and equal protection of the laws. The right due to process of law and equal protection of the law now apply to both federal and state governments. On June 16, 1866, the House Joint Resolution proposing the 14th Amendment to the Constitution was submitted to the states on July 28, 1868. The 14th Amendment was declared in a certificate of the Secretary of State, ratified by the necessary 28 of the 37 states. Okay, I see what that's saying. And became part of the supreme law of the land. See, now the Constitution, even though each state has its own constitution, how they govern themselves individually, but the Constitution, the general Constitution, the objective Constitution, is the law of the land, which the states cannot override the law of the land, right? So if they're going to make their own individual constitution, they have to make it in accordance to the law of the land, or the standard of the law of the land, right? Congressman John A. Bingham of Ohio, the primary author of the first section of the 14th Amendment, intended that the amendment also nationalize the Bill of Rights, but making it binding upon the states. Now I'm going to go look into the Bill of Rights now. When introducing, so he mean that he nationalized the Bill of Rights. So that means that at one point in time, the Bill of Rights was not a nationalized thing, right? Of the 14th Amendment, intended that the amendment also nationalized the Bill of Rights by making it binding upon the states. When introducing the amendment, Senator Jacob Howard of Michigan specifically stated that the privileges and the immunities clause would extend to the states. The personal rights guaranteed and secured by the first 8 amendments Historians disagree on how widely Bingham's and the Howard views were shared at the time in the Congress, across the country in general. No one in Congress explicitly contradicted their view of the amendment, but only a few members said anything at all about its meaning on the issue. For many years, the Supreme Court ruled that the amendment did not extend the Bill of Rights to the states. Let me read that passage again. The personal rights guaranteed and secured by the first 8 amendments. Historians disagree on how widely Bingham's and Howard's views were shared at the time in the Congress, across the country in general. No one in the Congress explicitly contradicted their view of the amendment, but only a few members said anything at all about its meaning on the issue. For many years, the Supreme Court ruled that the amendment did not extend the Bill of Rights to the states. Oh, I see. Not only did the 14th Amendment fail to extend the Bills of Rights to the states, it also failed to protect the rights of black citizens. A legacy of Reconstruction was the determined struggle of black and white citizens to make the promise of the 14th Amendment a reality. Citizens petitioned and initiated court cases, Congress enacted legislation, and the executive branch attempted to enforce measures that would guard all citizens' rights. While these citizens did not succeed in empowering the 14th Amendment, during the Reconstruction, they effectively articulated arguments and are offered dissenting opinions that will be the basis for the change in the 20th century. So we're going to look into the conscripts, right? So let me see this, right? They're saying that the 14th Amendment, there are certain states, or the Supreme Court ruled that the amendment did not extend the Bill of Rights to the states, which is crazy at this time. So this is why they have to keep amending it and ratifying it, you know what I'm saying, to kind of repair what happened or fix what happened with the first Bill of Rights, right? We're going to go into those too. Section 1, all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any persons within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states, according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. Oh, shit. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such states, being 21 years of age, and the citizens of the United States are in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crime. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such states. So that's talking about how important it is for the men when it comes to being part of Congress and being part of the voting process and presidency, right? Section 3, no person shall be senator, representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, or under any state who having previously taken an oath, as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as any executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Now, what that's saying is, if you were going against the United States government and you were part of the Congress or whatsoever, you can't run for office, which is a good clause, right? That's now preventing people from becoming presidents, and they're now rebelling against America, having that power, and you're already rebelling against the Constitution of America. You're in a position of power, right? No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elected president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislator or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. That means that Joe Biden and a lot of the Democratic left should never be able to run for president. Right. Section 4. The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payments of pension and bounties for service, in suppressing insurrection or rebellion shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave. But all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. So that's now if the state decides to go against the law on the land and start enslaving blacks or enslaving people. You know what I'm saying? So this whole 14th Amendment, right, is really meant to protect black citizens and provide consequences if those states rebel. Feel me? Now I want to look up the Bill of Rights. Oh shit, none. This is the 15th Amendment. So here's the 15th Amendment. And I think the 15th Amendment was to fix some of the issues going on in the 14th Amendment. To the former abolitionists. So one of the abolitionists is those are white people trying to stop slavery in the states that had an affinity for black folks. So there was good white people, right? So that should break a lot of you modern day blacks about this whole white supremacist argument. Because a lot of white people wanted to see you free. They had love for you, all right? The former abolitionists, and to the radical Republicans in the Congress who fashioned Reconstruction after the Civil War, the 15th Amendment enacted in 1870 appeared to signify the fulfillment of all promise to African Americans, set free by the 13th Amendment with citizenship granted by the 14th Amendment. Right there, the 15th Amendment is saying that this is specific for African Americans, not Caribbean blacks. All right? Let me see fashioned. What does that term mean right there? Okay. So when it's saying that the Republicans fashioned the Reconstruction era, that means they were with it. You see what I'm saying? See, the Republican Party was always for black folks. Always for black folks, bro. Always for black folks. The Republican Party were for women's rights too. We'll go into that, right? Okay, so let's go back to the 15th Amendment. So it seemed like the 15th Amendment was to enforce the 13th and the 14th Amendment. Black males were given the rights to vote by the 15th Amendment in retrospect. It can be seen that the 15th Amendment was in reality only another step in the struggle for equality that would continue for more than a century before African Americans could begin to participate fully in the American public and civic life. African Americans exercised the right to vote and held office in many southern states through the 1880s, but in the early 1890s. Steps were taken to ensure subsequent white supremacy. Literacy tests for the vote. I need to go dissect the sins of the Democrats. You see what I'm saying? I need to do that, right? Literacy tests for vote. Grandfather clauses excluded from the franchise all whose ancestors had not voted in the 1860s, and other devices to disenfranchise African Americans are written into laws of former Confederate states. Social and economic segregation were added to Black Americans' loss of political power. In 1896, the Supreme Court decision, Plessy versus Ferguson, legalized separate but equal facilities for the races. For more than 50 years, the overwhelming majority of African American citizens were reduced to second-class citizens under the Jim Crow segregation system. Let's look up. Let me look up Plessy versus Ferguson. We're going to look at who was a Republican in that case and who was a Democrat. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, the Democrats should not be involved in any voting process. The problem with that is that because the Democrats were the first party and the Republican parties came after, right? The problem with getting rid of them is to get rid of a vital building block or piece of the American landscape. But in my opinion, that Democratic Party should be shut down and revamped. Like, you cannot have racist people in the Democratic Party with their past. You need to be shut down and come up with a new counterparty or something. Because too much bad history, which they're probably going to do, right? Let's see who was a Republican and who was a Democrat in that. Let's see. Who was Republican? Let's see this. Let me read this. The Democratic legislature sought to roll back the advances that African Americans had made during Reconstruction by passing laws which restricted their freedoms and liberties. One of these acts was the 1890 Separate Car Act, which mandated that whites and non-whites could not use the same railway cars. Non-white passengers had to sit in separate cars or face arrest. Jim Crow train cars, contrary to the popular belief, so-called Jim Crow laws, did not begin in the South. These laws even predated the Civil War. The term was first used in Boston, Massachusetts in 1838. Wow. See the separate... Wow. So a lot of these things that were passed by your Democrats, bro. So let's go back to the 15th Amendment a little bit. Separate but equal facilities for the car. For more than 50 years, the overwhelming majority of African American citizens were reduced to second-class citizens under the Jim Crow segregation system. Now, see, that's why now when you go back to Jim Crow, when you see the white-only bathrooms or the white-only train cars, it would be pristine and immaculate. But the black-only train cars and the black-only bathrooms, they were just dirty. Like, that's how bad the Democrats was doing Black Americans. All of this is specific to Black Americans, not really Caribbean blacks. None of this includes Caribbean blacks or African blacks or tethers or whatever they want. This is all including Pacific for Black American citizens or African American citizens, right? During that time, African Americans sought to secure their rights and improve their position through organizations such as National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the National Urban League, and through the individual efforts of reformers like Booker T. Washington, W.E. Du Bois, and Philip Randolph. It's crazy how you're not mentioning Marcus Garvey. See, that's what I'm saying? Marcus Garvey, he's not even included in there. And Marcus Garvey is a Jamaican. So this is how I know that None of these things in here is specific to Caribbean blacks or to help Caribbean blacks. This is specific to Black Americans. The most direct attack on the problem of African American disenfranchisement came in 1965, prompted by reports of continuing discrimination voting practices in many southern states. President Lyndon B. Johnson himself was suddenly urged Congress on March 15, 1965, to pass legislation which will make it impossible to thwart the 15th Amendment. He reminded Congress that we cannot have government for all people until we first make it certain it's a government of all, by all, of and by all people. The voting rights of 1965 extended in 1970, 1975, and 1982, abolished all remaining deterrents to exercising the right to vote, and authorized federal supervision of voter registration where necessary. In 2013, the Supreme Court struck down any key provision of the act involving federal oversight of voting rules in 9 states. See, so the Voter Right Act of 1965, that's during the Civil Rights, right? All of that is to help African Americans or Black Americans. None of that is to help Caribbean blacks or Caribbean immigrants. Now, Caribbean blacks or Caribbean immigrants may have benefited from it indirectly, but not directly. So, FBA, y'all need to lift up on yourself. Go lift. Really, go lift. Lift up on yourself. And stop now following Tariq Nasheed and having y'all fight against Caribbean blacks. Well, to be told, Black Americans, y'all didn't like Caribbean blacks. Y'all didn't like Jamaican blacks. Just come out and say that. Just say that. Be honest and say that. Stop trying to say that you was cool with us and, you try to recruit us to be fighting numbers for y'all. No, you never liked us. You only really wanted to use us to be numbers for you. And the real reason why Black Americans or FBA don't like Jamaican blacks is because we have a conservative mindset. And we broke away from that unspoken Negro contract where you have to be struggling and be broke to be part of your group or to kiss Black women's ass. That's really what it is. You don't like Jamaican blacks or Caribbean blacks because we don't want to be losers or broke. And there are a lot of Caribbean blacks, Jamaican blacks, that have love for Black Americans. And we trying to tell you how to step your game up out of love for you. But with the unspoken Negro contract, Black Americans don't like when you call out their fuckery. See, Jamaicans, we have no issue holding each other accountable. We have no issue talking to each other about, but we need to step our game up, because we do need to step our game up. There's a lot of shit about Jamaican niggas I don't like, especially the broke ghetto, you know what? I'm not even gonna say that. Because just as you Jamaicans would talk about you don't want to rent to Black Americans, I want to rent to you Jamaican niggas either. You nigga Jamaicans and none of you nigga Black Americans. Both of y'all are niggas and do nigga shit. A lot of Jamaicans that come here, you're not appreciative of the Jamaicans, the first generation Jamaicans, and the second generation of Jamaican immigrants that came here and paved the way for your Black ass. Instead, you come here with your entitled bitch assness and be disrespectful towards the Jamaicans that came here before you. And fuck up the reputation and the respect that Jamaican niggas built up here. And then become warrantless deported and go back a yard and tell the fucker in the country over there. So really and truly, like, out of the both of y'all, Black American niggas and Jamaican niggas, both of y'all are trash. The lower class Jamaican niggas is trash, and the lower class blacks is trash. That's why a lot of FBA who have money and have sense, when they make money, they get away from y'all niggas. Even Black Americans don't like a lot of Black Americans. The higher class Black Americans who made some money and don't want to be part of the broke nigga struggle of the unspoken Negro contract. But anyway, the 14th Amendment was specific for African Americans, not Caribbean blacks, right? And I used to remember hearing talks of how Black Americans would tell Caribbean blacks that the Civil Rights Movement was not meant for Caribbean blacks. It was meant for Black Americans. Because their argument is that we were not really black. We were exotic black. We ain't black. So that's with the 14th Amendment. So it's like, first it was the 13th Amendment, Then it was the 14th Amendment. Then it was the 15th Amendment. That was to help fix, help to ratify and mend a lot of the stuff going on during the Civil Rights era and the Reconstruction era, right? I want to go into something else here. And I might make a different video for that. What's funny is that the Democratic Party, before they were against abortion rights, they were against women for having rights, and the Republicans were for women's rights. The Republicans were for the freedom of black folks, the civil rights of black folks, and for women's rights, and the Democrats were against women's rights. Now all of a sudden now it's like they're for all of these things. And the Democrats, they're smart because their talking point is we're for women's rights, but the premise of the talking point is if you pay attention to it close, it's really not for the rights of black people or for the rights of women. Right? When you talk about women having abortion rights, the Democrats want women to have abortion to delete their babies off of inconvenience. Like if they went on a hot girl summer or they with a dude and they were having irresponsible sex. That's why they want abortion rights. Not really for because the chick was, essayed or had any ancestral thing or PDF file kind of thing. It's really for because they want women to have the right to delete their babies based upon irresponsibility and inconvenience. When it comes to black folks, the Democrats just use black liberation to do fuckery to degrade the idea of what black liberation was about. And then using Marxism and communism and every other thing else, isms, socialism to push it. You know what I'm saying? Republicans served as candidates for the 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment was to help women get the right to vote. I'm going to go. No, a lot of these ideas that I'm having, a lot of these ideas, they are influenced or inspired by the Angry Man. Shout out to the Angry Man, the OG. Because you'll say something in his live streams and then I'll go research it for myself and do my own due diligence. Because I myself, I don't like getting lied to. I don't like getting fooled. So I make sure I go acquire the knowledge so that now if something comes up again, I can recognize it and you can't fool or gaslight me so easy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, in conclusion, this is Kish Rowdy Gamer Nation. I just wanted to do this small little video about the 14th Amendment and how it was specifically for Black Americans and not really for Caribbean blacks. So the FBA, you only need to lift up on itself and stop blaming everybody else but yourself for why you're failing. The black community is failing because of the black community. All the drug dealing, dope dealing niggas of the 80s, those are FBA. It's your FBA woman getting online and telling you FBA black men, you ain't shit this or you ain't shit that. That's on you. That's not because of Caribbean blacks. It's your fault. Stop blaming everybody else for your shit and pick your ass up, man. I'm out.